It's good morning, good afternoon, or even good evening to some of you, depending on where you are in the world. It's almost evening for me here in Germany. Welcome. Thank you for joining us for today's IIoT World Manufacturing and Supply Chain Day session on standards and interoperability, addressing the challenges related to standardization, interoperability, and integration of diverse IIoT devices, sponsored today by HiByte and HiveMQ. First of all, it'd be great if you could tell us who you are, where you are in the chat. It's always nice to get a feel for, who's joining us and where you are. And while you do that, get settled in, grab a coffee, whatever you need to do. Just a couple of bits of housekeeping. Session is just going to last just shy of an hour. I'm going to introduce the topic and then obviously our expert panelists. And we're going to be getting a lot of valuable insights from them. But we're also going to be leaving time at the end for questions from the most important people in the room. And that is you, our attendees, of course, our audience. One quick thing on that, please do post your questions in the Q&A function of the platform, not in the chat. It just makes it easier for me to find them, and it's more likely that your question is going to get answered. So Q&A function, not the chat, for all your questions, and just making my life easier, and I'm always grateful for that. You will also have the chance, once we publish some questions to the whole audience, you'll be able to upvote them as well if there's particular ones that you want to see answered. All right, so let's focus on today's session, which, as I mentioned, is all about standards and interoperability. And what we're going to be doing in this session is gathering insights into practical solutions, protocols, and methodologies that facilitate a cohesive IIoT device ecosystem. And in particular, we're going to be looking at issues around enabling diverse devices to communicate effectively and operate in unison. And we're going to be finding out how achieving this standardization and interoperability is going to pave the way for a more interconnected and efficient industrial landscape in the future. And to help us do that, I'm delighted to say we've got not just one, not two, but three expert panelists, and I would like to introduce them to you now. First, we have John Harrington, who's Chief Product Officer at HiByte. John is focused on product management, customer and partner success, and company strategy. He's got a lot on his plate because he's responsible for market research, customer use cases, product priorities, go-to-market, and financial planning. So he's a very busy man. He's very passionate about delivering technology that improves productivity and safety in manufacturing and industrial environments. And he spent his 25-year career delivering software to manufacturers and working for manufacturers in operations roles. This experience, he feels, has given him a unique perspective on how suppliers and end users really play a very important role in implementing new technology solutions. He has an MBA from Babson College and a Bachelor of Science in Mechanical Engineering from Worcester Polytechnic Institute. So welcome, John. Thank you very much for joining us. Next up, we have Ravi Subramanian, Director of Industry Solutions Manufacturing at HiveMQ. Ravi is a product management leader with extensive experience delivering high-quality products and services that have generated revenues and cost savings of over 10 billion for companies like Motorola, GE, Bosch, and Weir. He's worked across many different industries, mining, oil and gas, industrial automation, automotive, mobile devices, enterprise communications, and automotive and fleet management. And at HiveMQ, Ravi's in charge of evangelizing and enabling sales of the HiveMQ solution amongst manufacturing, energy, logistics, and industrial automation customers. And he's a very experienced presenter, very experienced panelist. He's appeared over the last couple of years at lots of events, online and offline, Hanover Messe, SPS, ICC, IIoT World, of course, Smart Manufacturing, and many, many others. So thank you very much for joining us, Ravi.
Thank you.
And next we have Jan Pingel, who's product leader for digital solutions at Ingersoll Rand. Jan has been in the technology segment of industrial manufacturing for over 20 years, and he's been working on making manufacturing software, enabling optimization, integration, and insights into the production and manufacturing supply chain. And specifically, he's been involved in product design for data collection, data visualization, and data analysis for process and event data for manufacturing. And over the last couple of years, he's been specializing specifically in topics around data management, IIoT, cloud, machine learning, digital twin. And by the way, I'll be hosting a session on digital twin later today, and also big data, of course. And over the years, he's held positions in global portfolio leadership, global product strategy, and global business management. And interestingly, Outside of his day job, he's also co-founder of Industry 4.0 Club, a peer-led organization of manufacturing leaders and professionals. And they're dedicated to engaging the power of diverse worldwide talent in order to really help accelerate the process towards Industry 4.0. And he co-hosts weekly sessions on that topic. Thank you very much for being here, Jan. And then finally, just a couple of words about me, Hamish Mackenzie, your moderator for this session. I've been running my executive consulting, advisory and coaching practice from here in Munich, Germany since 2006. And I work with B2B technology clients all across the world, helping them set and execute strategy, and in particular, helping them position their solutions towards customer outcomes rather than functions and features. Of course, I also moderate all sorts of events like this one online and in real life, as it were. And I also work with CEOs, startup founders, and senior executives, helping them to spend more time working on their businesses rather than in them. So if you want to know anything more about what I do, please get in touch with me over LinkedIn. I'm pretty sure I'm the only Hamish Mackenzie in Munich, so it shouldn't be too difficult to find me. And with that said, just a quick reminder, if you've got questions, please put them in the Q&A function. You don't need to wait until the end of the session. You can already start entering them now, and that will give us a chance to have a look through, organize, see which ones are the most popular. So please go ahead and do that. All right, so that's enough of the intro. Let's get stuck into the session. And I really want to start by setting some context, I guess. That's always a good place to start. And obviously, any IIoT environment consists of multiple devices, systems, types of data, etc. And what we need are ways of bringing all these different diverse elements together, obviously. And if we're able to do that, then we create a much more cohesive ecosystem that's easier to manage and, more importantly, easier to extract value from as well. And one of the ways that we can do this, obviously, is through standards. But that doesn't necessarily mean that standards are the only answer to all of this. So what I wanted to do is come to you, John, first, to start with you on this. So do you believe that standards can solve all or most of these IoT data interoperability and integration challenges? And if not, what are some of the other issues, some of the other challenges that are going on here?
Thanks, Hamish, and thanks for the introduction, and looking forward to this whole discussion. I think of standards as really powerful building blocks for how we communicate. I think of them almost like the rules of grammar. So they tell you how to form sentences and how to communicate. But just because two people know the rules of grammar of a single language doesn't mean that they have effective communications with each other. So we see a number of standards within our industry. We've seen some around in the machine control area with like the field buses, Ethernet IP, and Profibus. We see standards in supervisory data collection around OPC UA and Sparkplug. We see business systems and cloud interactions around MQTT and HTTP. And these are really powerful, and they all tend to have various specialties around, like, depending on the acceptable latency, the acceptable data volumes, the acceptable data structures, security, communication methods. So we see multiple standards in the industry for a good reason, that, solving depending on what you're trying to do. But we also see that in order to get real interoperability and integration, there's a second challenge, which is defining what's in that data. Having that intelligent communication between these two systems, whether it's a machine, whether it's another system, whether it's the cloud, wherever it is. So it really depends on who you're talking to and what you're saying, what communication you want to have. So for instance, to give you an example, if you have a piece of machinery like a motor and you've got a temperature measurement on, that temperature measurement needs to be contextualized differently if you're doing predictive maintenance versus production monitoring versus batch traceability or even sustainability. You may all need that one measurement, but you need to contextualize it very differently. Other information needs to go with it. It's creating those sentences that's really critical for interoperability. And those sentences are defined by the who are you talking to? Why are you talking to them? What are you trying to say to them? So we see the standards being critical building blocks to communication and to interoperability, but the contextualization of data as being the second piece to having true interoperability and fast integration of systems.
Right, and so two things. First of all, I know you're struggling with a cold, so thank you very much for.
No, I'm sorry if I.
No, it's no problem.
I'm a little hoarse.
I just wanted to make sure we all understand that you're really having to go the extra mile here to help us out with this event, and despite the fact that you've got a cold, so thank you. And I really love the way you describe that in terms of just because you know the rules of the grammar and the language doesn't mean that the other the other end they're understanding you. I know that from my bitter personal experience with my wife and my kids. just because I say one thing doesn't mean that they understand what I meant. Anyway, to come back to what you were talking about, I just wanted to ask Jan and Ravi if they've got any more input on that, especially on that contextualization piece, because I think that's really key.
Yeah. I think John hit it on the head, right? I mean, there are a lot of standards, fortunately or unfortunately, although standards was created to standardize how data is exchanged. But now we're sitting on a behemoth of standards, right? The good news is that like some of these standards can interop with each other, so you can somewhat kind of get the data out. But really, to John's point, what is that data? What am I using it for? What is the use case? I think that context is absolutely important, and we need to make sure that that context is available right through the value chain of right from where it is generated to where it ultimately goes.
Right.
Yeah.
All right. So context is definitely important, but we all agreed that standards are also a big part of the solution.
Right.
And so I wanted to come to Jan now, and maybe with a couple of examples. So Jan, can you just speak to what are some of the interface standards that are being used and to connect equipment data today?
Yeah, so I think, and John kind of hinted at that too. And by the way, thanks for having me today. I'm really looking forward to this as well. It's a great couple of people here we have on stage together with myself. So a lot of knowledge here for sure. Yeah, so from an equipment perspective, especially as I come from an OEM, there are a variety of standards being used, anywhere from old standards like Modbus, Profibus, OPC, DA is probably the most prevalent on at least the smarter equipment, and then OPC UA is now finally getting a little bit more into the mainstream, as it has been struggling to get to for quite a while. And I think when we're talking about context, that's really something that from an OEM perspective, if you can provide something so that it's easy to consume information from a machine, it makes a lot of sense. And unfortunately, in my industry, we're still Modbus based. That's really the industry standard for compressors for some reason. It's been there for years and years. But there are some work going on for most of the vendors in the space to get over to OPC UA. But I also see when we talk to some of our customers, especially large customers, that they are changing the game a little bit at the plant floor. So I hear more and more like, we actually use MQTT. So they're basically transforming to MQTT and running MQTT throughout the whole plant. Okay. And that's interesting to me too, because that's really the new standard that most OEMs are using when you're talking about pulling data back to their own environment into their digital twins and looking at analysis, looking at remote monitoring, et cetera. That's really the predominant standard there. So when we're talking about standards kind of evolving and coalescing at some point, that's probably some of the areas that we can kind of dig into a little bit. But yeah, there's a lot of different standards, and I think John's one of them that probably hits the most of them. And when they go out and do integrations with some of those systems that they need to do. The one thing that I want to mention around standards too is that most of the standards are, in my perspective, still kind of industry 3 perspective. You are at the plant floor. A customer has an industry 4 initiative, IIoT. They get somebody in, or they develop something to connect to those equipment, but that connection is still mostly what I would call an industry 3 type of connection, because it's just that these standards have been around for very, very long. It's the area where I have the most interest is where can we as an OEM share not just the raw data from our equipment, but actually some of our insights and some of our IP that we're using to generate information on, how can we share that back to our customers? So, we're getting to that later in the session here. So,
okay.
But, yeah.
All right, brilliant. Thank you. Thanks for that, Jan. I want to look at one particular aspect of standardization now that I know Ravi can speak about in terms of IoT connectivity. So, Ravi, can you talk a little bit about how MQTT and Sparkplug in particular enable that standardization of connectivity, and
Absolutely.
what advantages does that offer in terms of the way you do it, as opposed to traditional communications and open source versions of MQTT?
Yeah, absolutely. And John, I know you kind of mentioned Industry 3.0 and how most of the innovations are happening, right? So this is kind of like one example of truly getting to like an Industry 4.0, right? Because MQTT is kind of like really becoming a de facto standard for edge to cloud, edge to enterprise, or edge to cloud. And before getting into MQTT, right? I mean, obviously looking at like some of the challenges that we typically see in factory floors, I think we already addressed them, right? So many different machines with different protocols, variety of data sources, lack of a unified ecosystem. That's kind of like on the connectivity side. But then like more importantly, like need for real-time data, right? If you're doing like remote monitoring and things like that, or you're doing digital twin, like you mentioned, John, right? There is a need for real-time data that you can trust in, if you will, right? Because and also contextualized data to John's point, because if you don't have the real-time contextualized data, then your twin is only as good as the data that's being fed in, right? So that there lies a dichotomy. Last but not least, kind of like having a global view of all of your data, right? When you're trying to make a decision, you need to get data from all of your data points within your enterprise, right? Within your factories and the supply chain and things like that. And traditionally, factories or operations are snowflakes, right? They lack interoperability, and everything is run autonomously. There lies the problem. So there could be one operation that could be awesome because they have adopted Industry 3.0, 4.0. There could be other that's completely not there, right? So they're not talking to each other. This is what MQTT set out to address, right? It started in oil and gas in the late 90s. And the reason why it was invented is because in oil and gas, remote machines have no connectivity, little to no connectivity, and very less bandwidth, very hostile environments. So MQTT started as a publish subscribe based protocol. So which means that if I have information to publish, I publish it to a centralized broker, right? And that broker then shares it with any other clients that need to get that information on specific topics. So obviously you're addressing the fact that you have less connectivity, you're sitting in a hostile environments, but also you're addressing like the bandwidth limitations, right? Because now it's all based on events. If I have event to publish, I publish it. Otherwise, I don't publish it. So you're not tying up connections. And you're also making sure that your overall factory connections are more streamlined. And you have real-time information because you're publishing only in small packets. So whenever there is information, you're able to publish it. Some of the other things where MQTT excelled, and it ultimately became like an open source, is reliability, right? Quality of service. You can control how good the data is depending on your use case. Again, there is a lot of flexibility in terms of the payload size and things like that. Now, from a context perspective, Sparkplug was created specifically to add additional context, specifically for industrial IoT, right? Where the need for specific things like consistency across the payload, the topic namespace definition, and then the data structure itself, and the state management, because you want to make sure that you understand the states and things like that. So that's where Sparkplug actually added that additional data context to MQTT. So just in terms of overall, right, MQTT, obviously like people start off with Mosquito, which is kind of an open source, which is great. But where it actually falls is if you want to really get to high scalability, right, to beyond, like say 200 connections, you want to ensure that you have high availability, and you want to make sure that you're able to connect your data that you're getting within your ecosystem into multiple different platforms, right? And like typically, like we go against AWS or Azure. AWS Azure have their own IoT solution, which works fantastic for their cloud, but it doesn't work well for other clouds. So we truly believe in data democratization, which is, hey, it doesn't matter where the data where the data needs to go. We'll send it there, because you might have an application for which you need streaming analytics. You might have an application that you need a database. So you shouldn't be limited by the fact that you are a single hyperscaler solution that you can only use at hyperscaler. So these are some of the areas: high reliability, high scalability, high security. Those are the areas where a full-fledged enterprise-grade broker differentiates itself from like open source broker.
Okay. Yeah. All right. I think that's again obviously very important in terms of, especially in terms of reliability and security. I want to move on now to architectures. I've got a lot to get through, so I'm just conscious of the clock. And I wanted to come to John in terms of architectural patterns. What are some of those patterns that you see evolving to address the data interoperability challenges, John?
Yeah, it's an evolving industry, and for people that have been in our industry or in the industrial industry for many years, they're very familiar with the Purdue model of layering data through the system. So you start with the sensors, that move to the PLCs, move data up to the SCADA or the MES, and then potentially up to the ERP system. And what we're seeing today, similar to what Ravi was talking about, is that the volumes of data have increased dramatically. And the users of the data have also diversified. So whereas in the past, we were really only using this data for production process monitoring and control, now we're using it for analyzing quality and for supply chain optimization and for sustainability reporting or traceability. And as a result, there's just far more consumers of data, and there's a lot more data to be had. And so similar to what Ravi was talking about, we need new architectures. We can't be layering all the data through the systems. It'll overload them. And so we're seeing new architectures with MQTT, where you end up with this hub and spoke architecture of publishing the data into a single system and having, and then pushing the data out or making it accessible to others. So we see that hub and spoke being implemented by a number of companies instead of what people used to refer to as point-to-point connections. That way, with the hub and spoke, we're able to utilize data may go into the hub from the source and then be distributed to multiple different targets. And that's the real value of hub and spoke. You can also consolidate data from multiple sources, put it together into that contextualized payload, and deliver it. So that's really the key architectural change. And really, this whole concept of unified namespace is kind of building off of that with MQTT.
Okay, exactly. So can you just, because this is also where I get to learn stuff, because my technical knowledge is nowhere near as deep as yours. So can you just talk a bit about what that UNS is, a unified namespace, and how it specifically helps address some of the challenges that we're talking about?
Yeah, definitely. So, a namespace is just the data structures within a system.
Yeah.
So a database, their tables, and the table structure is their namespace. OPC has its namespace. So the concept of unifying a namespace is really to just say, we're going to standardize the namespace, we're going to have a common namespace, and we're going to make it in such a way that you can easily get access to information. So the unified namespace has come about, and it's leveraged, it's grown in interest, popularity, and it's really leveraging MQTT as the base communication protocol. But what's key is that we organize the data within the broker, because as Ravi said, you can put a lot of data in there, but you need to add some context, you need to add some structure. Well, the beauty of MQTT is that it allows us to have a topic structure. And with a unified namespace, we've decided to use the ISA 95 topic structure, hierarchy as a topic structure. So essentially, when you think about a business, you've got a company, and then you've got a site. Within the site, you have an area. Within that area, you've got a series of lines, and within each line, you may have a work cell. Within each work cell, you may have a series of assets that are contributing to that cell. So that's a very logical way of organizing almost all manufacturing plants across the world. It's just a way of kind of hierarchically organizing them. So the idea with a unified namespace is, well, at each level, you may have different pieces of information that you want to put there. So for instance, at the area level, you may have a schedule. You may also have a schedule at a line level. What are we working on? At a line level, you may also have OEE. You wouldn't have that for the area, but you may have that as a line, or you may have that as a work cell. At a work cell, you may have a series of orders that you're working on to produce, or you're producing a specific part right now, and you're collecting data on that part. And then at the asset level, you may be doing predictive asset maintenance. So the key is at different levels, you're trying to solve different information, and there are different people that are looking for that information. So if we can organize it, and we don't have this massive volume of data that no one knows what to look for, they can very easily go in and say, well, I want to know what's the schedule for line 1. Well, I can navigate down to line 1, and I could see, there's the schedule, and now I can subscribe to that and be updated on what the schedule is. Or I could navigate down to the OEE and find that for line 1 versus line 2. So it's just a really logical way of organizing data. And the idea is if everyone publishes it into the UNS in that logical structure, then others can very easily ask questions about the data that the publisher doesn't even know they're going to ask, but they just have access to it. It's kind of like a really logical card catalog, if you will, from days of old, a really logical way of organizing information. And then anyone can subscribe to it who has access to the UNS.
Yeah, okay, brilliant. And that really addresses the two challenges that you highlighted at the beginning in terms of the massively increasing volume of data and the increasing diversity of users. So that beautifully kind of addresses both of those topics. Yeah. All right, I know I'm kind of racing through here, but as I said, we've got a lot to get through, and I want to make sure we cover as much as we possibly can. So Jan was talking a little bit while ago about OEMs. So I wanted to come to Jan now and ask you, Jan, what is the role of the OEM now when it comes to customers' IIoT journey, overall?
Yeah, so I think there's two levels to that. Either it's the traditional, let me help my customer to really understand the data. That could be if you have an OPC UA server on your machine, you can do a lot there automatically. If you don't, if you have Modbus like we do, we kind of help the customer understand what the registers mean. And how they can utilize them. That typically comes in our manuals, et cetera, right? And that then allows customers to figure out how they're going to utilize that data, where they're going to use it in the manufacturing, on the plant floor, in their process, in their operations. But I typically also, the other side of it is we get customers asking us, well, this raw data is great, but I don't understand it. I know you understand it much better than I do. And I know you're already pulling that data up into your cloud and you're doing something with it there. I'd like to get some of that. And that's where the OEM is typically the red-headed stepchild here, because we really struggle with finding the right way to connect to our customers without becoming integrators, because that's not our business, right? We just don't, we can't scale that. So the first step we typically do is that, that's what I see with a lot of OEMs. They have like a portal that customers can subscribe to. They can get on the portal. They can see the data. They can register to get notifications when there's any insights or notification from the equipment that they need to act on. But it's still not the same as being able to access the insights and the machine learning that we're doing on our equipment. And again, the other thing too is that we get customers saying, well, can you just give us your logic and your algorithms and we can put them in place? Well, machine learning, that's not really how it works, first of all. But the other thing too is that a customer will be connected to maybe 5, 10, maybe 20 of our type of equipment. We're connected to 10,000 and more. So the information that we can gather on trends that are happening on specific types of machines in the field that we can then utilize to understand, hey, in 10 days, based on what we're seeing, your machine is going to stop working because we've seen it so many other places with our machine learning, right? So that's really where I have been looking for what is the one standard that we're kind of going to be gravitating to, right? And we're hearing a little bit about MQTT, Unified Namespace. I also hear OPC UA now have cloud-to-cloud kind of structures that they can work on. We've not been fully ready to deploy something. There could be an API we could deploy that a smart customer can connect to. We had some conversation with companies like HighByte around could they be our integrator that we just offer to a customer and say, hey, just use these guys and they can connect our data to yours. So there are various ways here, but as an OEM, the key part is that we're not integrators. We cannot scale that. We can develop to one standard, possibly maybe two. We can maybe have an API with another standard on top of it. But that's really the level of effort we can put into it without getting into areas that we're not really that good at, right? That's not our core business. So we try to help our customers as much as possible. We've done a couple of pilots around some integration, but again, that really taught us too that it doesn't scale for us. Customers are too different, and they have various different, I need to connect to their historian, or I need to connect to a specific SCADA system or whatever. And then the other thing is just security. So that's another part of it. How are we going to make sure that data goes back and forth securely from both sides? So for example, like the data that we collect from our equipment today, we're connecting to cellular network. We're not even connected to our customers' network at all. And that's really one of those areas of security that we found it's a lot easier for us to actually deploy our equipment that way, because we don't have to have that conversation with the IT department around what's your security standards, how do you get through firewalls and all that kind of stuff. We don't have that at all, because we're basically putting a cellular antenna on our equipment and we're pulling the data out. So, but yeah, again, we're kind of going a little bit down that road about what are the most predominant ways that we're seeing connectivity from equipment systems, and not just the equipment, but the actual systems in the cloud down to customers. But it's still a journey where I would say at the beginning of. I don't think we are at the middle yet, and definitely not at the end of that.
Okay, so and we're kind of moving towards the next area anyway, which is what I want to talk about, practical examples. And I want to ask Ravi in a minute about some specific MQTT use cases. But given that we're now in the OEM groove, so to speak, could you maybe just give us some specific examples of the type of customers, and how that data gets shared, the IoT data?
You ask me or Ravi?
Yeah, Jan, you. Sorry.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, sure. Yeah. So I mentioned the typical portal that customers will go on and get access to that.
Yeah.
And so that will give them most often, access to both specific alerts and trips that happen on the equipment, because we're connected to a control system, and then all the insights we're generating from our digital twin and our machine learning. We're also notifying our customers and internal. Some of those insights go to our service centers, and they work with the customer. Something goes straight to the customer. Something goes to our sales people, because we find that, for example, that we're under capacity and they actually need another piece of equipment because they have so there's various different ways that can be a first step. Customers can often on those portals, they can download data. So they can select a specific area and they can then download that into a CSV, put that back into their system. So, but that's not scalable either, right? But it can solve a specific problem if they have one, right? But then the connectivity back that in real time, that I think most OEMs look first on like an API kind of structure. It is easier to deploy. It is something where you can at a low level understand the security, the multi-tenancy that you would have to put in place, all that can be done there. And then you could layer other protocols on top of that. And we find that small and mid-sized manufacturers, they're not as comfortable with that. Large manufacturers, they're fine. It really doesn't, they can be fine with MQTT, they can be fine with APIs, OPC, but there's much more of the small and mid-sized manufacturers out there, and so that's where the standardization that I'm looking at would definitely hugely benefit. But we've done specific interfaces with some of our customers in those pilots that I mentioned before, somewhat to connect back to the SCADA system, and we work with the IT department and finding ways to get through the firewall and security and all that kind of stuff. But that's not the preferred for us for sure. So some of the examples that we have with our customers is where we can send them insights around some behaviors that we can see that is not beneficial to either energy use or lifespan of the equipment. So some of those we send directly to a customer, some of those we can get through with our sales people or service people, and they will then work back with the customer. We have with our remote monitoring today, we have a specific group of customers that are on a high level of service, high service level, where basically they pay us an annual fee, and we do everything, including replace the equipment if it's needed. And so what we use there specifically is to try to cover or reduce our cost. So if we can detect something that allows us to go just and visit the customer once and fix the problem once, that's really a key for us. We also now oftentimes be able to not have to go to the customer, be able to get them on the call and say, hey, you're doing this, you're doing that, or are you doing this, are you doing that? And then they fix it right away and they're up and running. So that's really critical for our customers too, because then their downtime is reduced because we can fix it quicker, we can get on site quicker. So that's only examples of the connectivity and where we kind of interact with our customers.
Okay.
Awesome.
Yeah, perfect. I think that makes it really real, especially for me, who hasn't seen some of this stuff happening live. Okay, great. Ravi, I want to come back to you now and speak a bit about some of those MQTT use cases, and also about some of the results that those have enabled from your perspective.
Yeah, for sure, right? I mean, we kind of see use cases in the supply chain area, global supply chains, disruption, and then obviously how we can help with that. Operations, factory operations, energy operations, OE, that's kind of like a very popular topic, right? And then last but not least, analytics, right? I mean, how the data can be prepared and be ready for advanced analytics, which is kind of like the final frontier for a lot of customers. But to get to that is a lot of issues for customers. And some of the things, like, for example, like our sweet spot is like being able to talk to different factories, given the scalability that we can provide and the reliability, connecting to multiple factories, easily like bringing in the data by putting brokers in different locations, and then like bringing that into like a centralized broker, for example, and being able to provide the real-time data, if you will, the diagnostic data, if you will, to in a single location. That's something that we do, if you will, and then we have other examples also, specifically around specifically machine health visualization. That's one area that we have seen where customers have been able to reduce the machine downtime by simply putting the things in place, the real-time data, the trustable data, the contextualized data, and through like alerting and advanced analytics, they've been able to reduce the machine downtime. And looking at machine throughput, that's another big area, which is basically related to OEE. Again, by putting together, again, a lot of these things are kind of like the same, but then like the contexts are different. And it may seem like, yeah, I mean, it should be a no-brainer. But the thing is, as you look at like your system, you kind of like realize that there are things that you could do, especially when you don't have data like consolidated in one location. You might be trying to make some decisions, but you're completely missing a large chunk of the context because you're not bringing it all together. This is where when they deploy our solution, they'll see like instant improvement in the throughput, because they're able to bring all that data together, right, and then make that available, contextualize that data. Some of the other areas, labor productivity monitoring, that's important, especially around these days where generative AI has taken over to take care of like a lot of the mundane tasks. So employees can focus on the more advanced, the things where actual human beings are needed, right? And that's definitely led to improved productivity and forecast accuracy, right? I mean, ensuring that there is kind of overall improvement in the accuracy in the forecasting of like the goods coming in to the materials coming in for like what we need to produce and put out. So these are some of the areas where we have really shown some improvement for customers.
Okay, so I think the benefits and the ROI are definitely coming through there.
Yes.
So thank you for those kind of very tangible examples.
Yeah.
So before we come on to get onto some of the questions which we've had in, and audience, if you've got any questions which you've been burning to ask and you haven't got it in the Q&A function there yet, then please do that, because we'll be coming to questions in a few minutes. But just before we do that, it's one of my favorite parts of these sessions is it's time to get out our crystal ball. I think I'm actually going to buy a crystal ball so I can hold it up at this point in future sessions, so just to make it all a bit more real. So let's have a look at what's coming down the line. And John, I know you wanted to talk a little bit about data ops or industrial data ops. It's just like a new hot term. Seems to be focused around solving some of these data interoperability challenges. So can you just define what people are talking about when they're talking about data ops, and how that addresses the interoperability issue?
Yeah, I'm happy to, Hamish. By the way, instead of a crystal ball, I think you need like a disco ball, because I think they have the lights going for all of us. But
okay, I'll see what I can do.
Yeah. So, the way that people used to implement systems in the past was system by system. They would bring it in and they would identify, well, where do we need to get data from? And then the person installing that system would go out and find all the different sources and connect them all up. And what we've talked about is we need to get away from that. We need to really build a discipline and a knowledge base around data, interoperability, and integrations. Mm-hmm. And so it's not just about implementing a new target system, because we have hundreds of them. It's about building a discipline around that data, and how do we deliver usable data to the target systems at the speed that they need it, with the information that they need efficiently. And that's really what data ops is about. It's about building a discipline around delivering data that's usable, that's curated for whatever purpose it's going to. So it really comes out of the IT space, and it's around putting, like, you're thinking about the teams of people who needs to be involved. Well, in the industrial space, it's the OT team, it's the IT team, but it's also the consumer of that data, which is usually the business user. So it's bringing those people together, bringing in people like data scientists and data engineers, having them working with the controls engineers, the automation engineers, the SCADA engineers, who know how all those target systems are created or source systems are created, so that you can integrate these systems effectively. It's about defining some processes. So we've had processes like data contracts and data governance in the IT world for a number of years, but we really haven't thought of them in the OT world. So it's bringing those processes into the OT world, into this data ops environment, to say, look, we need to define who owns the governance of this data, who owns the contracts between these different systems. How are we going to standardize this data, defining semantic data definitions? And then it's around technology, and that's certainly where HiBite comes into play. That's where Hive MQ comes into play. There's a lot of different technologies out there. How do we bring these together? We often partner the two companies, HiBite and Hive, to bring the technologies together so that we can work with people like Jan, as well as the manufacturers, to enable them to effectively move and create this discipline around managing the distribution of data. Because the initial integration is important and it's got a cost to it. But what we find is the maintenance of it is even more challenging.
Mhm.
And so if you don't have a well laid out, well architected system with systems in place, what IT teams end up happening is they end up constantly troubleshooting, trying to fix all these integrations instead of being able to proactively manage and maintain them and then react to their customers' needs. So data ops is really a practice around data and data management within the industrial world, within an industrial company.
Yeah.
Okay, brilliant. Thank you for that explanation. And you were talking a little bit about how you and Hive work together, and there's actually a question coming about that, so we'll hopefully get to that later. Before we do go to the questions, I just wanted to finish off with Ravi. I know that Hive has some new innovations coming around in terms of enabling end-to-end IoT connectivity. So could you just talk a little bit about those?
Yeah, absolutely, right. And obviously, we truly believe in partnerships, right? To be able to help Jan, you have to make sure that all of us vendors can come together and create those standardized architectures that we talked about that makes it simplified for his use case, because no one solution or no one standard which we determine here can solve all the problems, right? It's like, how do you actually help the end-to-end from an end-to-end perspective? We have actually done some innovations though around this area to try to get the data from sensor to cloud, and then along the way, obviously working with different partners to help here, right? So we have launched an edge product, like a small scale edge product recently that allows customers like Jan to be able to translate the data, say from Modbus into say MQTT, and bring the data in. We have some data contextualization that are more on the data quality, like policy manager, if you will, to kind of to cleanse the data a little bit and manage it a little bit. Hey, I don't need all this data on the cloud, right? Because there is high cost to that, right? So I can somehow control that to make sure that only certain data goes to the cloud. And because we all know that if bad data goes to the cloud, it's going to be much costlier to fix it there. And then all the innovations that we've done to make our product highly available. I mean, we continue to innovate around that, to which is kind of ensuring that if everything kind of breaks around you, how can the broker ensure that you can still run your operations, right, without any disruptions to your operations and things like that, right? Last but not least, just being able to extend or connect to other systems, if you will, right? We truly believe in the democratization of the data. So we continue to launch new extensions. We have one for Azure, AWS, and Google, but we also do it for other platforms like Kafka, for example. We recently, today actually, we announced the a data lake extension, which allows you to connect to any data lake, if you will, right? I think we're starting with the S3, but then we would add other data lakes also to that. So that's pretty exciting for us, Hamish.
Perfect. All right. Thank you very much for that, Ravi. I'm sure that all of you probably could have talked for twice as long about all of those issues, maybe even longer. But we've only got 10 minutes left, so I want to make sure we cover some audience questions. And the first of which is I guess for you, Ravi. And please, audience, forgive me for my pronunciations. I'm going to do my best, but yeah, we'll see how it goes. So this is from Sujit Chowdhury. And asking, currently there's still a majority of IoT hardware vendors are not supporting Spark B. And what can we do about that? Is it about waiting for Spark B compliant sensors, or going for other products which can convert non-Spark B to Spark B? What's your view on that?
I mean, it's a combination, right? I mean, obviously, we can put some makeshift solutions. One of the other things is I'm also part of the Eclipse Foundation, which manages Sparkplug, and we are actively trying to figure out methods to encourage vendors to be Sparkplug compliant. The Sparkplug compliancy is something that started with the 3.2 version of the spec that launched last year, which is a series of tests that you need to do to make sure that your product is Sparkplug compliant, and you can get the compatibility certificate or label, right? That makes it easy for you to go and say, I'm Sparkplug compatible. I can work with all of the devices that is Sparkplug compliant or MQTT compliant, right? but there is also education needed because a lot of people have already like gone the OPC direction and they feel that that's the way to do it. But there are some, while that might work in a lot of contexts, but in other use cases it may not work. So figuring out like which use case would you want to continue OPC versus like you want to go to Sparkplug, and trying to educate the prospects at large is absolutely important, which we continue to do as well.
Okay.
Yeah.
Great.
I think the key though, Hamish, is don't wait.
Yeah. Don't wait.
Right.
Move forward. There's lots of potential out there. There are lots of products out there. There are multiple standards, and the technology is ready.
Okay. Thank you. And just going back to that question about how HiByte and HiveMQ work together, for example. So this is a tough one. Vishwanath Hariha, I hope I've got that right. HiByte says that HiByte has a broker, HiveMQ has a broker. So how do these complement each other? Maybe John, you can take that.
Yeah, no, I'm happy to. If you look across the industry, you're going to see a lot of overlap of technologies. And when you evaluate your technology needs, it's important for people to think about what is critical, what are the critical things that they're trying to do, and identify the vendors based on that. So, as it has come out today, Hive has some tools to onboard data into their MQTT broker, which HiByte also does. HiByte also has a broker in itself. Now we think of our broker as a local broker. It's a broker that's packaged within our solution, the Intelligence Hub. It allows you to easily onboard data into the Intelligence Hub or to start creating your unified namespace. The HiveMQ broker is a highly scalable, high performant, cloud-based broker that if you're doing a site-wide or enterprise-wide unified namespace, you absolutely are going to need it. They provide a lot of scalability in terms of, Ravi can talk to all of that. But the key is, if you need some base technology, there's a lot of overlap of the players. But if contextualization is critical to you and you realize that you need to onboard this data, contextualize it, and move it, then the Intelligence Hub is designed for that. And we support a lot of different protocols to ingest data as well as to publish data to. If you need a enterprise-wide, highly scalable, highly performant MQTT broker, Hive has an excellent product for that. And we have many customers who are using both of our products together because in their case, they're at the level that they need both.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, because you had to start on your site, right? At your site, you need to take the data, you need to contextualize it, and then you need to move to the enterprise, right? That's kind of like where we come in. So like John mentioned, I think we complement each other. So their broker is the local broker that is part of their intelligent agent and does a lot of the contextualization. We actually create that scalability to the enterprise, connecting to other systems. So yeah, I mean, we have like a few common customers where we work together. I think there's been no complaints. I think we complement each other.
Yeah. Okay. Perfect. I don't think it would be really possible to run one of these sessions without the dreaded word AI coming up somewhere. And I know we mentioned it a little bit already, but not much. And there's a question from it says Parag Dave. I'm thinking maybe it's Dave Parag, but anyway, or is that even the right question? No, I'm sorry, it was the wrong one. Emin Ogra is the person who asked about AI. And I'm sure you've all got some opinions around this in terms of data interoperability. But I wanted to maybe ask Jan first, in terms of the OEM side of things, what role is AI playing? Is this a big investment area for you? Is this a big investment area for your customers? What's going on from the OEM perspective?
Yeah, no, absolutely. It's a significant investment for us, using various technologies to be able to do predictive, prescriptive analytics on our equipment. And AI is broad, right? But we're not talking generative AI here at all. We're just talking AI in particular, right? But yeah, absolutely, it's a big area for us. We have so many different types of equipment globally, and so we have a whole team that is dedicated to help our subject matter experts to identify what's the right analytics to run on our equipment. And basically, a lot of times our equipment, we have people that have been working with that equipment for multiple decades. They know it very well. They know when it goes down, but they would like to know a little bit better around what is some of the indicators for it when a piece of equipment goes down. And that's where the AI and machine learning can help us significantly there. So yeah, no, it's a significant investment for us. It is where we can, in a whole new way, help our customers be more productive, be more energy efficient, and can also increase the lifespan of their equipment.
Okay, and any of you, are there particular applications in terms of data interoperability specifically?
We've seen, we've done a lot of research on AI and done a lot of work with it. We have a number of customers using it, similar to what Jan is talking about. So there's AI, like machine learning and that kind of thing, to learn about machines. And the beauty is that if you can contextualize your data, then you can apply the AI across multiple different machines and many different machines instead of just having one. So it provides you such a greater data set to work with. In terms of being able to do the contextualization, and we've seen, and our research has shown that it doesn't. You can't apply a large learning model to a series of Modbus registers and have it figure out what they are.
Yeah.
For machinery that came from multiple different vendors and multiple different at multiple different times, it can't be done. You need to do some ground level standardization of the data. But if you do that ground level standardization, then the potential of AI is massive. And that's what we found. In some industries, they have highly standardized data, and like the heavy process industries, they also have great documentation through drawings, P&ID drawings and whatnot. And in some cases, you can use those to cleanse the data and to apply the contextualization to it. Okay. So that's really powerful, but much of industry doesn't have that level of documentation and that level of standardization, in which case you really need to do some brute force contextualization yourself. But it's not that hard anymore. It's all done through a user interface. It's not coding anymore. It's much faster. We have lots of tools to do that.
Okay, brilliant, perfect. Thanks for that, John. I'm afraid we've run out of time. So I'd just like to say thank you to all our panelists. Thank you to the audience for all the questions. Thanks to also, of course, to HiByte and HiveMQ for sponsoring the session. Without you, we couldn't run these events at all. So thank you very much for that. Thank you for everybody who is attending. The next session is Driving Operational Excellence with IIoT and Advanced Analytics, a path to manufacturing success, sponsored by Influx Data. Enjoy the session, and I'll see you later for digital twins.
Thank you.
Great talking to you guys. Thanks a lot.
Thanks so much.
Thanks.
Ciao.